if they go back to their old participation that we had prior to the ARRA funds, if they go back to where we have to contribute, is it 20%? 30%. And the federal government can contribute 70%. We're holding $71.4 million in kind of a pigeonhole just in case we have to do that.
Untouchable.
Pardon me?
It's untouchable for
Medicaid. You know, I hope if the feds don't go back to the 30/70 from where they are now, then that $71 million would be extremely helpful.
Right.
Yes.
Do you and the First Lady support Idaho Public Television, and why or why not?
Do we support? Sure.
Any members?
No. Oh, are you? Oh, no. I've supported it in the past. I've gone on and.
What's the value of Idaho Public Television to Idaho City?
Well, I think it has a lot of value, but I think it also has a lot of constituency that's willing to support it. And if we have to do something in our tax structure that says, you know, for what you give to public television has a enhanced tax credit or something such as that, we'll do it. Now remember, this is over a four-year effort. We're going to do what we can to help them get self-sufficient. And going through this first year is going to be, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned about whether or not we can and can't do it.
Governor,
work week on the table for the state government?
What we've done there, as we just said, what we did was we sat down and we figured out with all the public employees, school teachers, everybody, parks, well, not parks, yeah, parks, everybody that gets money out of the general fund. If we took those employees and how many days furlough would we have to give them between now and June 30th in order to make up a sizable portion of that shortfall, 1 day a month. 6 days between. But what we did then was we went to the agency heads. You don't have to do that. If you can figure out how to pay that same value of 1 day of furlough for every employee in your agency, you can figure out a different way to get some efficiencies or whatever, you're free to do it. We just gave them that idea. It's not a rule of thumb. It's not something that says you got to do this.
Governor, is there money in the budget for the Constitutional Defense Council Fund? You said you might put $700,000 into it?
Yes.
And would that then be used if Congress passes a health care reform? Would that money go to that?
I would anticipate working with the Attorney General on that to see what our path forward is. Yes, but I think, and I think there's going to be a lot of other states that are going to be jumping on board. I think there's now 15 or 16 Attorneys General that, did I say that right, or is it Attorney General?
Attorneys General. Attorneys General.
It's general, you used to call it. Anyway, you know the office of that they're going forward with their lawsuit. Since I've written my letter, I've gotten quite a little bit of interest in that. In fact, this weekend, Arnold Schwarzenegger went through the pains of going on talk shows and said that he didn't want it either. He was against it as well. Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up. Yes, sir.
Governor, are you worried at all that you're sending a message to businesses that might consider moving here that we're no longer investing in human capital with tens of millions of dollars in cuts to hiring and now further cuts to public schools? What's the message to businesses?
Well, no. I can at least anesthetize a little bit what we're having to do in education, public education, and the action that we're taking. We spent the last 2 years scraping and finding and going to every other pot of money in the state to find $318 million so that we didn't have to cut public education at all, because and that alone should have suggested the value that we place on that. What was the rest of the question?
What's the message to businesses that you're sending? Are you worried about that?
Well, I'll tell you the message that I've been getting from business, and which is why I took the time to introduce those fellows today, is that we as businesses want to get in here and be part of the future of education in Idaho, because in many cases today we can't hire the product that you're turning out without giving remedial math, without giving remedial English, without going back through biology and chemistry and everything else. So I believe number one, we've made the case that this is a desperate move. And I think we've made that case over the last 2 years, where we've stretched everything else we possibly can to keep them as whole as we possibly can.
This needs to be the last question, folks.
Wait a minute, Betsy hadn't asked one.
You mentioned in your speech several reports from that you're going to be presenting to your main committees in the legislature, calling for various tax incentives. Are those things that you think the legislature should enact this year, or is that some future discussion?
Well, obviously, I would be very careful. I guess we really haven't talked about this yet, but I would be very careful about doing anything to an already pretty well depleted revenue stream. And I would have to see what that would do to the revenue stream and what the other side of it is. If you give a tax cut that saves you $10 million and you end up getting $40 million worth of increase in economic activity, of which we would then take a certain percentage of, either in sales tax or, you have to weigh the cost versus the benefit, I think.
But at this point, are any of those proposals reflected in your budget?
No. The only tax cut reflected in my budget is the grocery tax. And that's 15 million. All right, one more, John. That's
a
it.
really quick one. If you don't have to use the 71 million that's in the Millennium Fund for FMAP, you talked about that would be very helpful. Do you have some particular areas where you would like to use that money during the 2011 budget cycle?
Well, of course, where are we cutting? And where do we not want to cut more than we don't want to cut anyplace else?
So you could
obviously any extra money that we can come up with, if we don't need it for something else, would obviously take a look at education, would obviously take a look at higher education, would take a look at those things that are important for economic activity and economic growth. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.